They say gray hair is a sign of aging. But what if it's actually a symbol of power, something you're not supposed to discover? Imagine that every silver strand on your head isn't your body failing, but a hidden message from your soul. A quiet signal that you're crossing an unseen threshold. A boundary between simple biological existence and true spiritual maturity. Hair has always been more than just appearance. Ancient cultures called it the threads of the soul, a bridge between humans and the divine. Shamans let it grow because they knew every strand worked like an antenna, picking up the invisible. Warriors feared losing their strength if their hair was cut. The wise weren't recognized by youthful skin, but by the glow of their gray hair. Yet today's culture has programmed us to despise it. The billion-dollar dye industry has taught us to see white as old, weak, undesirable. We're told gray hair is a flaw, proof that something in us is fading. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if each gray hair is a spark turning on, proof that something in you is awakening? Science says it happens when follicles stop producing melanin. But the ancients believed that when black turns to white, vital energy stops flowing outward and begins moving inward. Gray hair was seen as proof you had crossed into a new realm. Ready to see reality without the veil of illusory youth. Isn't it strange that society urges us to hide the very symbol once honored as wisdom? That we spend fortunes on ads convincing us to cover what used to be sacred? In this chapter, we'll uncover what you've never been told about gray hair. First, we'll look at the biology, but from an angle science will never explain. Then we'll dive into its ancient symbolism. Why was white hair seen as a mark of divine connection across so many cultures? After that, we'll expose how modern marketing turned wisdom into shame. And finally, we'll explore the hidden truth that every gray hair is an energetic code, a secret key signaling initiation. In the official story, gray hair shows up when melanocytes stop producing melanin, the pigment that gives hair its color. Science calls it oxidation, cellular stress, or genetic decline. In other words, the body ages, hair loses color. End of story. But is it really that simple? Why the hair, specifically? Why not the skin, the eyes, the bones? Why would nature choose such a visible marker to reflect what's happening in the invisible? That's where cracks in the official story begin to show. Even biology admits not everyone goes gray the same way. Some people turn gray in their 20s, while others keep their color well into their 90s. If age were the only factor, how do you explain that? Traditional systems like Taoism and Chinese medicine offer another answer. To them, hair is an extension of the blood and of yin, the vital energy stored in the kidneys. When that energy weakens through emotional stress, sexual excess, or long-term fear, the first warning signs appear in the hair. It's not a failure. It's a signal, a spiritual alarm telling you that something deep at your root is shifting. Here's the unsettling part. If that logic holds, gray hair is not just oxidative stress, but stress of the soul. Each white strand becomes a record of what your energy field has endured. A trace of experiences that age not only your cells, but your deeper memory. Think about it. How many times have you heard someone say, his hair turned white overnight from shock? Science calls it a myth, but real stories abound. People who, after trauma, grief, or shock, see their hair turn white overnight. Coincidence? Or proof that hair reflects what vibrates in the deepest part of the self? The system calls it a genetic flaw, but maybe it's the opposite, a sign of activation, a message that your body is no longer pouring all its energy into the surface and appearance, but is beginning to direct it inward, to deeper levels. Oh, a shift in polarity. From outer to inner, from material to spiritual. And this opens the next question. What did white hair mean in ancient cultures? While today we cover it up with dye, they revered it as a sign of power. What we see as a defect, they honored as spiritual authority. If what I've shared so far resonates with you, don't ignore it. This hidden knowledge isn't in science textbooks or TV commercials. You'll discover it here. Subscribe now and hit the bell, because each week we reveal secrets the system works hard to keep hidden. Stay with me until the end. What comes next will forever change how you see gray hair. In the previous section, we uncovered that what science calls a genetic failure could actually be an energetic code. Something the ancients already knew, which is why they never considered gray hair a flaw. On the contrary, in ancient cultures, white hair was a sign of initiation, a silent banner of spiritual power. Look at depictions of wise figures across traditions: Celtic druids, Norse wizards, indigenous elders, Amazonian shamans. All are shown with white hair and beards. Do you think that's a coincidence? It's not. It was their way of showing they had crossed an invisible threshold, one of experience, inner vision, and connection to the unseen. In the East, Taoist tradition saw gray hair as a transformation of yin, not decay, but a signal that vital energy was no longer focused on preserving youthful looks, but on opening deeper spiritual channels. White was not emptiness, but fullness of light. In Jewish mysticism, the Zohar describes God as the Ancient of Days, an old man with white hair, a symbol of eternal wisdom and purity. In Christianity, apocalyptic visions describe the Son of Man with hair white as wool, pointing to authority and transcendence. In Hinduism, the rishis, sages who reached higher states of consciousness, are shown with long white beards, visible proof of their connection with the divine. Indigenous peoples of the Americas understood it similarly. For the Maya and the Navajo, elders with white hair were guardians of collective memory. They were respected not just for their years, but because their hair revealed they had endured storms, grief, visions, and emerged carrying a deeper vibration. In many traditions, white hair was seen as the color of the ancestors. Each gray strand was like a thread connecting you directly to the spirits who walked before you. It was a bridge between generations, a visible way to carry the memory of those no longer here. Compare that with today. We've gone from honoring whiteness as a sign of power to despising it as a loss of youth. What was once sacred is now hidden beneath layers of chemicals. And maybe that's no accident. A world obsessed with the superficial cannot allow symbols of true wisdom to keep shining. Now imagine that every time you dye your hair, covering a single white strand, you're not just hiding a hair, but concealing a sign that you've entered a new stage of consciousness, a mistake of the body, or a spiritual key connecting you to the eternal. And that leads to the inevitable question: who benefits from us hiding these signs? Who profits when wisdom is mistaken for weakness? We've already seen how ancestors revered white hair as a symbol of power and divine connection. But at some point in history, everything changed. What was once a banner of respect became an aesthetic defect to be erased at any cost. What happened during that shift? The answer lies in a multi-million-dollar business, the hair dye industry. The system tapped into a deep fear in modern people. The fear of aging, of losing value, of becoming invisible in a culture that worships eternal youth. And on that fear, it built an empire. Every year, the global hair dye market generates billions. Chemicals are poured onto the scalp to hide what nature is trying to reveal. And it's not just about vanity, it's about control. Because a society that despises its own signs of spiritual maturity is easier to manipulate. Ask yourself, what would happen if gray hair still carried the prestige it once had? Young people would look at elders with respect instead of dismissiveness. Experience would be seen as strength, not as a burden. The system would lose its profitable grip on creams, surgeries, and dyes. Most importantly, it would lose the narrative that youth is the only thing that matters. The manipulation goes far beyond beauty standards. It's cultural, psychological, and spiritual. The cult of eternal youth is no accident. It's a way to cut off the transfer of power between generations. If they can make you believe white hair is ugly, they've severed the thread that connects you to ancestral authority. If they can make you ashamed of what was once a badge of honor, they've shifted the balance. Now the young set the pace while the wise are pushed into silence. And here's the most unsettling part. Every time you hide a gray hair, you're not just covering a strand. You're shutting down an energetic process. Remember what we uncovered earlier. White is not emptiness. It's light, memory, activation. Covering a gray hair is like switching off a signal your soul lit to tell you. You're crossing into the next stage. You're tuning into a new frequency. The eternal youth industry has been so effective that we now associate white hair with weakness, sickness, uselessness. Meanwhile, dye commercials beam with smiling faces, as if true success in life means erasing the marks of time. But time cannot be erased. Time is honored. And white hair may be the most visible reminder of a truth the system fears, that maturity carries its own strength, a wider vision, a deeper connection to the unseen. And here's the heart of it. If gray hair is a symbol of spiritual wisdom, and maybe even more, a secret language of your own soul, a hidden code that only a few can understand, then what happens when you cover it up? Earlier, we saw how the system turned gray hair into a defect to be concealed. But what if I told you that beyond culture and aesthetics, every white strand can be read as a spiritual code? The ancients sensed this. The body never does anything randomly. Every symptom, every sign, every change carries a hidden message, and white hair is no exception. It's as if the soul uses your head as a canvas to paint its secret language. In many traditions, white is the color of illumination, purity, and connection to higher realms. In alchemy, the whitening process, albedo, is the second stage of the great work, where impure matter begins to refine and approach the divine. What if every gray hair were a reminder that your soul is undergoing that same transformation? Think about it. Hair grows from the root, from deep within the body. Each time a gray hair appears, it doesn't start on the surface, but from within. As if an inner impulse were making itself visible. It's not just that pigment is lost, vital energy changes polarity. What was once shadow becomes visible light. Some mystics say gray hairs act like antennas, tuned to pick up subtler vibrations. Shamans and elders even claimed they could hear spirits more clearly once their hair turned white. as if the silver strands became direct lines to other dimensions. And it gets even more intriguing. Some esoteric traditions claim the placement of gray hairs also matters. A streak on the forehead is not the same as one on the crown. The forehead is tied to the third eye, intuition and inner vision, while the crown connects to the seventh chakra, the gateway to the divine. Each gray hair, then, isn't just about age. It's part of a secret energy map showing where your soul is opening new channels. Imagine what that means. Your white hairs as hidden cartography, a script the system never wanted you to learn. Because if you could read it, you'd stop seeing aging as decay and start seeing it as ascension. You would stop running from your gray hairs and start recognizing them as sacred symbols. And here's the final revelation. When we hide gray hair, we're not just following fashion trends. We're silencing the language of the soul. We're censoring the messages our energy sends through the body. We're erasing a code that may have been written to guide us from matter to spirit. White hair is not a flaw. It's a signature, a password, a reminder that life isn't measured only in years, but in the light your soul has gathered. And here's the crucial point. Will you keep hiding that code, or is it time to finally decode it? If you've come this far, you already know. Gray hair is not a mistake, but the secret language of your soul. If you want to keep uncovering these hidden codes, don't let it pass you by. Subscribe now and hit the bell. Every week we reveal what others won't dare to say, because forbidden knowledge shouldn't stay buried. Stay until the end, because what you're about to hear could forever change the way you see yourself in the mirror. You've already made the journey with me. From the biological explanation that reduces gray hair to a genetic failure, to the ancient symbolism that celebrated it as power, we've seen how modern industry built an empire convincing you to hide it. And we've decoded the deepest layer, gray hair as the soul's secret code, a map of initiation written in silence on the body. Now you see why the system needs you to despise it. Because every strand of gray is a reminder that time is not your enemy, but your teacher, that your body is not shutting down, but transforming, that youth is not in the color of your hair, but in the vibration of your spirit. That's why the oldest traditions treated white hair as sacred. The shaman, the druid, the sage, the elder, all wore their whiteness proudly as a banner. They didn't need to hide it because they knew it was a bridge. Proof they had crossed to another level of perception. But here's the warning. If you keep playing the system's game, every time you dye your gray hair, you're not just covering a strand. You're switching off a symbol, silencing the language your soul chose to mark you with, giving up a portal of wisdom that could guide you. So the next time you look in the mirror and see a white strand, don't curse it. Ask yourself, what is my body trying to tell me? What code is my soul activating right now? Maybe that gray hair isn't a mistake at all, but a message. Remember this, gray hair is not an ending. It's a beginning. It's the light breaking through the shadows. It's the ancestors leaving their signature on your head. It's proof that even if the system wants you to feel diminished, you're stepping into a space where your vibration rises. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The system can force you to cover your hair, but it can't erase what it means. The symbol will remain, waiting for you to read it. So now the choice is yours. Will you keep seeing gray hair as defeat? Or will you finally recognize it as awakening? If this message resonates, subscribe and ring the bell. Share it with someone who needs to remember that their gray hair isn't weakness but a portal. Because in the end, white hair isn't proof of decline. It's evidence that your soul is writing the brightest chapter of your life on your body. Until next time,